On today's episode of Rags to Riches, we're interviewing Jeff McCallum, former owner and $2 million exits from ABK Restorations, now as a consulting firm, has scaled his business to the exponential level. And let's tell his story. See what you think. So Jeff, we were from the same business.
Yeah.
We were competitors for years, and somewhere in there built a friendship.
Yeah.
And you had one of the most successful restoration, by restoration companies, folks, we mean fire, flood, asbestos, mold, and we were competitors, but you always had an incredible reputation. You're always hiring more and more staff. You grew to multiple locations, and then you did the infamous exit, which is incredibly difficult for owner-based businesses where you're heavily involved.
Yeah.
You built the systems and procedures, and poof, you're gone.
Yeah.
You sailed away into the sunset. You could have retired 5 times over. You had the dough.
Yeah.
And then eventually you got sick of sitting on your ass
Yeah.
and decided to build a consulting firm.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about, what got you to the point in your life as a young guy where you said, you know what, I'm ready for restoration. How did that come about?
I stumbled upon that. Restoration was, because first of all, I had this burning desire as a kid when I worked at a gas plant up in Fort Nelson. I hated every minute of it. I didn't like, everyone bitched around the table in the morning, coffee. They didn't like their lives. They didn't like any of that. After I realized I didn't like the trades, because listen, I was, born in the 60s, didn't really have a chance to go to school. It was like go to work in the gas plant like my dad. That was interesting. That turned me on to, hey, I got to go start my own business. This is not going to work for me. I don't like the trades. I've said that. Go down to, I first bought a taxi. Then after the taxi, I had a few people running the taxi. I thought, wow, this is cool. I can get people to work for me.
Mm-hmm.
Love that. And then I bought a carpet cleaning franchise. Bought it in first year I had that in Victoria. The first 6 months, somebody called me and said, I have water in my basement. I'm like, oh, okay, I can extract it for you. And that was when Oak Bay and Victoria flooded heavy that year. Never forget it. Kuwait War started and GST was introduced. Stupid timeline, but I remember that. And back then, nobody knew what restoration really was. It was, you could go in and extract, but construction companies didn't do it. Builders didn't know anything about restoration. It was new. I rode that wave. I was lucky enough to get in early on that. And that's why I say I stumbled upon it. I thought, wow, why am I carpet cleaning if this guy's paying me thousands of dollars to extract water out of his basement?
It's so funny you say that because most of the owners of restoration companies started as cleaning companies.
Yeah.
And had that epiphany.
Absolutely, 100%.
One of the things that impressed me most about our early relationship, and now it's been a 15-year relationship, is
you were a pain in the ass when I met you. I thought you're a bit of an this guy's really full of himself. I thought anyway.
But I took some of your business, didn't I? That hungry, competitive sales vibe. It always rubs people a bit the wrong way. But you're right; it was full of piss and vinegar, and hadn't learned humble approach yet. Hadn't failed enough.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
One of the things that always impressed me most about doing business with you, and I think why we still do so much business today, is that the restoration business is incredibly dirty. And it is an ugly, dirty business, or at least it was where I came from in Vancouver, and you kept it clean. What I mean by that, folks, when I was coming up through restoration, we were, purchasing all kinds of stuff that was not really okay for insurance adjusters and, paying for renovations on their homes and, taking them out and, the booze and the escorts. And we were just like the finance guys back in the day in the Wild West.
Yeah.
I remember my expense account at one time for a company was $15,000 a month. And all I spent it on was partying and favors for insurance adjusters. Yeah. But when I moved here to Kelowna, I thought, okay, well, I'm going to have to get my hands dirty. And then there were guys like you at the top of the heap. You weren't doing any of that. You weren't dipping your foot in that pool, and you didn't have to do things that are below board because your reputation and services were so good. Yeah. That was an epiphany for me. So my question is, how were you able to grow such a reputation with insurance companies without having to spend a fortune on entertainment? Because that's typically the challenge.
Well, it's funny you say that because it came later, like when I had a box at the event center and I'd take people to hockey games and stuff. And that came after I'd built all these great relationships. And I thought, hey, hockey's, but how I built it, I believe, was this pit bull mentality with customer service. And it all started with the team. Like it started with our staff. And I was always about customer service. Matter of fact, the latest book that I just wrote, I called it small business success mindset, but really I should have called it obsessive customer care because I was obsessed with it. Came from the cleaning world, everything had to be so, but at least I learned how to let go and let other people do things. But I was really good at training. We had mosh pits on a continuous basis. We talk about the wins. Everybody had their shot, and I was a big fan of second chances. I know I'm into the minutia a little bit, but it was that, I know, my business partner from way back when said to me, he goes, Jeff, you're really good at customer service. And I really didn't know what that meant, but it meant phone the homeowner 35 times. And I did that. How's everything going? How are you doing? With the employee, it was the same thing. Matter of fact, my son just pointed that out the other day, the 35 times. He goes, because they hung up, my boys are all in business now, and it was from them hanging out. And my daughter actually used to ask, I'm digressing a bit here, my daughter used to ask strangers what their phone number was because she'd hear me on the phone going, what's your phone number? After I'm dialing them, and how do I get hold of you? And anyway.
So your customers felt that you cared, and you think you had an additional care level that maybe some of your competitors didn't.
I think that was massive, and I'm going to brag a little bit here. We did the customer satisfaction forums before anybody else. I remember Claude Blackburn put that out. He was one of the guys that developed the dry ease equipment, you see, right? I remember meeting him years ago at a water symposium, blah, blah, blah. I bought his book, Bob and I, and we're opening it up, and it's just basic stuff like, customer satisfaction. We implemented that. And then all of a sudden, insurance companies years later want that. That's to button up a job. But all that stuff to me meant so much. And I put so much money back into the company too. I wasn't sitting there taking the money for myself. I kept rolling it back into the company, and I would read the different books, attend the different seminars. And for me, it was all about mindset.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I loved that part of it. You read something, you go to a seminar, you implement it, you train, you implement, you grow. It's cool. And there's not all the questions in business have been answered by somebody, right? You just have to hang out with the right people and make it happen, right?
Good coaches still recommend that young entrepreneurs read The Art of War.
Yeah. And there's the other one, The War of Art, with Stephen Pressfield. He's got The War of Art and Going Pro and Do the Work. Mm-hmm. And this guy, some of his materials, it's crazy. You read it and you go, oh, maybe I should try this with an employee one-on-one, or maybe I should try this. When I say mosh pit, I got that from Brian Scudamore from 1-800-GOT-JUNK. Mm-hmm. He's all about raw, and that works. Anyway,
of course.
Sideshow.
Folks, one of the things I think you should really focus on and listen to with Jeff here, and I already know this by having the luxury of a relationship with him for the last 15 years, is there is a perceived glass ceiling for most of you at the early six-figure level.
Yeah. And
you're a one-man show or a two-man show or a three-man show, and you're just working yourself to the bone. Most of you mid-sized contractors or, let's say subcontractors, you're in this boat. You're making your 100 to 200 grand a year. You're working 12 hours a day. You can't get to the job sites fast enough. Right. You can't seem to get good enough employees. Yeah. And when you're billing or doing all the back end, you and your missus are doing it till 12 o'clock at night. You can't get it done. We call that a glass ceiling in the business. One of the things Jeff is an expert at, and I want to ask him these penetrating questions to divulge the answers, is you hit that glass ceiling, and more than any other company, you figured out a way to delegate, move on, train, hire, and before you know it, poof, you had a business with fully trained staff, because I hired some of your staff when, we've hired each other's staff over the years. Yeah. Yours were more trained than anybody else's. Yeah. And I believe that glass ceiling you can only punch through if you have the systems, procedures, more importantly, training process for your staff. What was it that you implemented, or what was that knack that you had or ability to really delegate and grow, and that fear of letting go of some responsibilities that you might lose money or customer reputation?
It goes sort of deeper than that. It's, as a leader in a company, I believe it's you. It starts with you first. I'm an avid reader. I attend the seminars. I take that information and I love reading bios, people that have done it before. Take that information, but there's all the little things. It's like when you're talking to an employee, you need to be tactful with an employee. That means that you build trust with them. You can talk to them about sensitive subjects, and you build each one of them up. And then you build up your head people, your project managers who wear 15 different hats, your administrators, they're all treated the same way, and they treat each other accordingly. It is an interesting thing, and people overlook it and they go, well, Jeff, it's because of the product you got. No, it all goes, it is people, people, people. You hire the wrong people. If they burn you out and you get slapped in the face, a lot of employers, they get slapped in the face by employees, they quit or they do something wrong in the company. They go, well, I'll never hire again. They feel that slap forever. It's like, let it go. Don't hang on so tight. That is what I was all about. And speaking of hanging on tight, and I used to whine about this with my boys later on when they came into the company, was I never drove a new truck. And I bought all these new Ford Transits, one after the other, and we'd put cargo, like shelves in them, and sign them out, and I go, oh, I just want to be in a new truck, back in the truck again. I was always, anyway, it's a stupid little thing, but it's that letting go and letting other people do things for you. That leadership it's not what people think, man. Leadership is in the trenches every day and understanding your people. That is success to me. I don't care what the product is, man. It's people. You look at Richard Branson. I think of Richard Branson all the time when it comes to customer service. He is all about people. Anyway, that for me, that's probably answering it somewhat. But the other part was, I remember when I was being owed, I think 1.2 to 1.5, something like that.
In receivables age from insurance companies.
In millions. And I thought, it's always that last $10,000 that you can't come up with. So I was freaking out. I always made payroll. But so my vice president at the time, he goes, let's do go to a fractional company. Fractional financing, if you don't know this, they're like loan sharking. They'll lend you X. We didn't do it. We ended up not doing it. The bank worked out something with me. I got a bigger line, so forth. But it was a scary time in my business, right?
There.
And it was, right? And I understood receivables after that. But I guess really it's like, I don't have a big enough ego that I'm always right about shit. If I'm talking to the VP and he gets a good deal, I'll follow it through. The bank, hey, no problems. I wear everything on my sleeve. Let's do business together, whatever it takes. And of course, we didn't do that fractional sharing, but it showed me something that, hey, you reach out, you can make it happen. Again, business is not that difficult. It's usually you as a leader and an owner, you're the one that's in your own way most of the time. And I say that because if you have a business and the business isn't working for you, you got to ask yourself, why are you in the business? Do you have that burning desire? And that's one of the reasons I sold too, was it got so big that we need another level of executives. And I just thought, no, I don't need to do that anymore. Don't want to do that. I've done my 30 years on just that one company. Anyhow.
Can I ask you, how long did it take you from getting from 6 figures to 7 figures in that company? 5 years, 10 years, 15 years?
Probably 10 years.
10 years.
Because probably shorter than that, because you have some ebbs and flows, like it changed. And then we started that second company and things really blew up, the asbestos company. When we separated two companies, that in itself was a huge story.
It's funny how your multiple lines of income and your multiple revenue streams end up being the tickets that push you to that next place.
Yeah, it is, because
they have for both of us.
Yeah, they have. Yeah. I think about what you've got going on now. And I think of the millions that we made. We're always every year in ABK Restoration, we went up millions every year. And then when we did the NORHAS, of course, that went from I separated the company and brought partners in, and they paid me a royalty because I was losing my asbestos now, right? And that quadrupled. It just took off, went nuts, which really makes you realize that, what you focus on grows. And again, as a leader, what do you want? It's like the businesses we're in now.
For sure.
What do you want? What's your goal, right?
Now, if there are a few hundred contractors in that early 6 figures place, they got them and their missus and a good, key employee, and that's it, and they're trying to grow. We've been there.
Yeah.
What is the best advice you can give that, let's call him 25 to 35-year-old man working to the bone, barely home for his kids, who's trying to scale and get to the next level? What's the best advice you can give that young man?
Well, to me, I think the best advice is to reach out to somebody. I know I'm not trying to sell my services, but I had a business partner where he was a sounding board every day. We read the same books. We talked the same language. You need somebody on your team, because I think sometimes companies think that they have to go out and spend 30, 40 grand on a consultant, which depending on where you're at and depends on what type of business model you have, whether it's making money or not.
Or it's feasible or not.
Feasible. But it's this idea of reaching out to other people. Surround yourself, and you've heard this a million times, maybe you have, maybe you haven't. Surround yourself, you are a product of the 5 people you hang around
Get in
with.
the tank with other sharks.
Yeah, and I'm not just talking about your family and your kids. I'm talking about your business network.
We did.
We did,
We were competitors.
Yeah, we were competitors, but it's like, that's the best advice, because you're always looking at what is your business model? Are you evolving with that model? Is it still, because don't get me wrong, restoration in the early days, as you know, was so good, you could make a million stupid decisions and still make money.
It was incredibly profitable.
Right? And as it got bigger, everyone started getting into insurance companies, started to put the clamp down, and you had to justify every little expense.
That's right.
It's still a good business, but there's a lot of hoops to go through now. And that advice can vary depends on where you're at. But I know that when we were at 300 grand, I remember. When we were at 600, I remember. When we were at $1 million, I remember. We were at 2, 3, 5. I remember those times because it meant more trucks. It meant this. It was scary every time, especially the receivable part. When you're trying to pay people, you want to be this man of integrity so that you want people to work for your company and know that they're going to get paid, some sub-trades, and your employees.
And you get paid last.
Yeah, and you get paid. Yeah, and we still have employees in that company that are 20 years, even after selling it. Mind-blowing.
Yeah.
Anyhow, that's only the tip of the iceberg in terms of, I think, first advice. But
absolutely. So you've left restoration, sold the company, moved on, and we've done business now. We just signed another contract to do more business together.
Yeah.
So let me do Jeff a service and tell you a little bit about what he's doing now. And I hope you young contractors reach out to him because he can change your game. There are different types of consultants out there. And Jeff has now become a master back-end business consultant. I hope what you heard from listening to him today is that he is an exceptional leader when it comes to delegation, scaling, breaking through perceived glass ceilings. More importantly, guys and girls, if you don't have the systems and procedures to handle another $1 million in work, you're screwed. And those tiers that he's talking about, 300, 600, 700, we have grand illusions of what our life would be like at that next tier, right?
Yeah.
Then we get to that tier and realize the dragons didn't get smaller.
Yeah.
The dragons get bigger.
Yeah.
We just get a bigger sword.
Yeah.
And that importance of growing and scaling, if you try and do it on your own, you're going to I've made more mistakes than Jeff, and it cost me dearly. But when you nail the back end and you nail how you grow organically and how you grow and you have the systems and procedures and the net to catch all the new business that comes in, you're not going to fuck it up. And Jeff didn't fuck it up. So he's a business consultant now. He's a master of the contractor, and he can teach you guys how to get to the next level. So thanks so much for joining today.
A lot of fun.
This is Jeff McCallum, McCallum Consulting. And this is his story of rags to riches.
Thanks.